Gamble.
We're at the Martin Gambill Cemetery.
Let's go.
In and around, what the hell's the name of this town? Crumpers? Crumpers.
So we went to the wrong Gamble Cemetery. They bred like rabbits up here.
They did.
The gate's down here to the left.
Here, you stand in front. I need a picture of you.
No, I'll get you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's do that. We'll come back out and get pictures. Let's go keep going up here. Then we'll get pictures, okay?
Jesse?
Yeah, Jesse Gambill.
Oh, yeah.
This is the plaque they put up right here during the last dedication. See the plaque?
Yeah. That's new, 2022.
Yeah. What's it say, Gamble?
Born 29 May 1750. That's about what I had him. In Culpeper, Virginia. That's where all the Gambills came in. His dad died 1812, so he was 62 years old. Ashe County. After enlisting in 1768 as a regulator, Gambill fought in the Battle of Almont, North Carolina in 1771. So he's 21. And a skirmish at Old Fields in Wilkes County, that's the big county, in the fall of 1780, he volunteered to deliver an urgent and important message to Colonel Campbell, alerting him to march against the advancing Tories under British Major Ferguson. To deliver this message, Gambill made a horseback ride of over 100 miles in 24 hours from the Yadkin River Valley, North Carolina, to the Holston in Virginia. He was wounded on October 7th, 1780 in the victorious Battle of Kings Mountain, a lot of dead. This defeat of the Loyalists was a key turning point in the Revolutionary War. Martin was one of the founders of Ashe County, where he served as sheriff, tax collector. He also represented Ashe County for 2 terms in the North Carolina State Legislature. On September 23rd, 1777, he married Nancy Nall, right? And they had 7 children. Marker placed by the New River Pioneer Chapter, Daughters of the Revolution.
Yeah.
NS, I'm not sure I know what NS.
Probably NASTAR.
Daughters of the Revolution. Yeah. So, wow, that's impressive.
Let's take a picture. It's a great day in South Carolina. Welcome to Kings Mountain on this glorious day, July 31st, 2024. We're here at Kings Mountain because we have two very, very special guests here today. Wade Williford and Gary Gambill, both who never knew each other until last night when we drank bourbon, and now they're very, very close, scarily close. But they both had great grandfathers, five generations back that fought at Kings Mountain, and we're patriots. Today we need patriots, and we'll talk about what each of them did, and then we're going to walk their footsteps at Kings Mountain. So Gary, give us a 2-minute view of why you're here and your great grandfather.
The reason I'm here is my claim to fame is Captain Martin Gambill, born in 1750. Lived to be 72. He died in 1812, I think it was. He fought. He was one of the mountain men. I would consider mountain man, who in the Revolutionary War fought here at Kings Mountain. Actually got injured, I guess got shot in the arm, but survived. And also fought in Alamance, and then we found his burial site up around
Crumpler, yep.
Crumpler. We actually went to the burial site, Martin Gambill burial site, and had about a half a dozen other members of the Gambill family there, buried there. And so the reason I'm here is I want to learn a little more history on Kings Mountain, where they fought, how they fought, and see if I can't learn a little bit here.
Hey Gary, you missed one important detail. Talk about the ride.
Oh, the ride, yeah. Martin Gambill was instrumental in allowing the Continental Army to know that Cornwallis was coming in from the south, because he made after it was before the Kings Mountain, but he was able to ride 2 or 3 days, 100 miles on a couple horses. They died, and in essence what he did, because communications back then were nothing, he was able to notify the Continental Army in the north that Cornwallis was coming up from the south, and were able to help fight this battle and control the British coming up.
He also was able to warn the over the mountain men that were camping at Sycamore Shoals in Tennessee that they needed to double time it and make their way to Kings Mountain, and they played an instrumental role in this victory. Okay, now.
And this battle here was very instrumental in winning the war.
Exactly.
Revolutionary War.
Okay, the esteemed Wade. Your thoughts, and why the hell are you here?
Well, everything that Gary said is, a lot of people don't realize the significance of this battle, because Patrick Ferguson, who was the commanding the right wing of the cavalry for Cornwallis, that was basically their intelligence gathering apparatus at the time, is going to be killed here. And so he is now going to be blind on the right wing. Subsequently, we'll see 3 months later at the Battle of Cowpens, when Tarleton loses. Now, Cornwallis is basically blind, and he's trying to follow Daniel Morgan and all the way up, but he doesn't really know. He knows he's on the other side of the Catawba River, but he doesn't know where. So that will ultimately end at Guilford Courthouse and then on up to Yorktown. But I had a grandfather here named James Lynn. He was 84 years old when he died. He was born, I believe, in 1748. He came here from southwestern Virginia, and he walked over with the Over Mountain Boys. Now, a lot of people are not familiar with one of the, I would say, foolish mistakes that led to this battle, and that was the gathering of the mountain men came about as a consequence of a letter Patrick Ferguson wrote for Cornwallis called The Letter Over the Mountain, in which he told the people who were in Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, which was the frontier then, and who had not taken up arms. They were Scotch-Irish. They really weren't involved as much then. But he sent a letter to all over to the villages that said, lay down your arms, which they hadn't taken up, and swear allegiance to the king, or we will cross the mountains and lay waste your villages. Yeah. And that wasn't the way he talked to those people. And they all started coming together, and they crossed. They met Sycamore Shoals, and ultimately came here. But they came in from many different directions. James Lynn was with the Lincoln Brigade, and he fought under Malcolm Henry. After the battle, he later was rewarded for his participation in the Revolution with land in what we know as York, South Carolina. Then it was Yorkville. And he later became the sheriff. His son John succeeded him as sheriff. They're both buried at Bethel Cemetery outside of Clover in York County. So these are people who weren't classically educated people like so many of the British leaders. Fighters. Yeah. And they had grown up fighting Indians. I mean, this was a tough area out here. And that is the way this battle will be fought, from tree to tree, gully to gully. And that's not the tactics the British used.
So Gary, your Martin Gambill fought under Benjamin Cleveland.
Benjamin Cleveland.
We'll walk his footsteps, and your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather fought under
Malcolm Henry.
Malcolm Henry. We'll walk their footsteps. Hey,
Try to do it.
never forget the value of patriots, especially in today's society, and the sacrifices these men's families made to our freedom. God bless.
If you look at the topographical map here, number 5 is the visitor center.
Okay.
Just for orientation. That yellow line is the battlefield trail. The gray, not gray, the tan line here is the Colonial Road that both armies are going to use. They're coming from that direction towards Charlotte, so they're coming this way. Patrick Ferguson takes his army, his men, they go up to the top of Kings Mountain up here. They're not planning to fight a battle here.
This is at the highest point.
Sort of, it's the highest point that's near the road.
This is.
Yeah, his interest, he's not looking for a place to fight a battle.
Right.
He's just looking for a campsite. That's what brings him here. He's been marching hard. His goal is to get into contact with Lord Cornwallis at Charlotte, get reinforced with light infantry and cavalry. He's spent the summer chasing the Patriot militiamen all over South Carolina. It's been a very frustrating time. He hasn't been able to get them to come to give him battle the way he wants. So he knows that he's being pursued, but his hope is that once he gets those reinforcements, he'll be able to turn around, defeat the Patriots, and then they won't be able to escape him because his cavalry will catch them. So when he comes here, he sets up his encampment. He just picks this spot, again, not because of the height, but because it's dry, it's by the road, he's got a good source of water. That's what he's looking for. He's not planning to fight a battle here. For that matter, neither are the Patriots. The Patriots are concerned that if Ferguson gets to Charlotte, he'll link up with Lord Cornwallis, who has around 8,000 battle-hardened professional British soldiers. And if he does that, they will not be able to touch him. Over the mountain men, the Patriots, they also have very limited supplies with them. There are concerns that if they're away from home for too long, that the truce that was agreed to with the Shawnee, Cherokee, and Chickamauga will break down, and then their settlements will be exposed. So their goal is to fight him as soon as they possibly can, so they can get back to their own settlements. So Ferguson camps out here. The Patriots come down that road toward us in the diagonal from that direction. There's a spot that's just off that map that's at Kings Creek. If you came in from the highway, you cross the little bridge that's over it. So the Patriots cross Kings Creek, they dismount, they split themselves into 2 columns to march around and surround Patrick Ferguson. The first column, which is primarily going to be the Over-Mountain men, comes in and they start the battle off on that side of Kings Mountain over there, sort of towards the peak area there. It takes about another 15 minutes for the second column of Patriots to come in down around the road, deploy themselves over in this area, and complete the encirclement of Ferguson's men at the top of Kings Mountain.
So where would Benjamin Cleveland have been?
So Benjamin Cleveland would have been in this general area over here.
And how about your guy, Wade?
What was your guy again?
Well, he was part of the Lincoln Brigade of Malcolm Henry.
So that's the Lincoln County Militia.
Yeah.
So he would have been in this general area.
Same area.
Yeah.
Well, what are the odds, huh?
If you can see on my map here, so there's Cleveland, and then the Lincoln County Militia would have just been to his left flank. So they're in the same general area there. Now, they're the group that, as I said, takes a little bit longer for them to get into position. So when the battle starts down there, Ferguson doesn't know about this second column that's coming up on this way. So all of his attention is down over there. He's not expecting to fight a battle, so he really hasn't thrown out scouts very far away from him. So really the first sign that he has that he's under attack is the sound of his own guards, the few that he has, being shot and driven in. So he gets little to no warning that this is happening.
He has no Indian support?
Nope, there's no Native Americans known to have participated in this battle.
May I say something?
Yes, sir.
Patrick Ferguson actually is the only foreign-born person in this battle.
Oh, yeah.
He's the only British soldier. Everybody else here is an American, either as a result of having been born here or having moved here at some other date. But he's the only British soldier. The men that he has under him are loyalist militiamen, so they are Americans who have decided that they wanted to fight for the legitimate government of their country, which at this point is still George III and the British Parliament. So that's what they have going on at this point. Now, eventually the loyalists at the peak of Kings Mountain, which is over here, are going to be pushed off that peak. They are essentially just going to get shot to pieces. They make several attempts to drive off the Patriots with bayonet charges, but they don't have enough men to do this effectively. So they are shot to pieces, they are worn out. They get pushed off of the peak down into where the lower end of Kings Mountain is, this area that they're encamped at which point again they realize now that they've been surrounded. So they're taking fire from all sides as well as from an elevated position over here. This is going to be some pretty fierce fighting in this general area. Desperation will do that. There are additional bayonet charges made against the Patriots who are slowly fighting their way up to the top of Kings Mountain. Ferguson realizes he really has to do something or he's in trouble here. So he gathers what mounted officers he has, around 10 of them. He leads a cavalry charge down the slope of Kings Mountain here. And depending on how you feel about Patrick Ferguson, the man, he's either doing this to save his own skin and escape. He cited some of the Patriot officers, figured that if he could kill them, then the Patriot resistance would collapse. Or he's trying to punch a hole in the Patriot lines so that his army can escape to this road.
It could be all three.
It could be all three. He doesn't make it very far. He's shot from his saddle. He's killed in a hail of gunfire. And the rest of his army is forced to surrender shortly after that.
What were the, if there was any organization for Ferguson, particularly the real mountain guys, are fighting Indian style, right? They're not trying to band together. They're fighting from tree to tree. They're making themselves small targets.
So
Are they forming up in any way? Are they?
Ferguson's men are fighting, as far as we can tell, in a very traditional European manner. If you are to make it up to the top of Kings Mountain, it is a very, very, very narrow ridgeline. There really is not a whole lot of room. When Ferguson came to South Carolina, he is appointed inspector of militia. The British have this problem, which is that they don't have enough men to both occupy South Carolina and push forward into North Carolina. So the solution to this that they come up with is to raise units of locals, the loyalists, train and equip them as professional soldiers, allow them to take over the occupational duties, which will free up the British soldiers to push northwards into North Carolina and Virginia. So he has spent the summer training these men to the standards of the British Army. That's what they've been working on. That's what they've been fighting or training to do. That's how they had been fighting in previous engagements prior to Kings Mountain. So as far as we can tell, that's what they did at this time. The Patriots, on the other hand, and I've said this before to other people, it's very interesting because if you were to read about this battle, it conforms to all of the general practices that are associated with Native American warfare in the Eastern Woodlands. So much so that if you did not know that the Patriots were Europeans, you could describe them as Shawnee, Cherokee, Chickamauga, Creek, and it would read, the battle would read just as an engagement between European soldiers and Native Americans. Fought any time between the early 18th century to the War of 1812. So it really does conform to that style.
Didn't Benjamin Cleveland, when the first charge came down the hill by the British or the Loyalists, didn't he make a proclamation to his guys that said, fight the way we fight like the Indian fight, and hide behind trees, don't give ground.
Yeah.
Take everything you can, and then systematically fall back, and we'll gather and recharge after that, but don't run.
He said something like, for God's sake,
yeah.
fight like the devil.
Yeah.
So there's one of two quotes that get thrown around there's one by him and then there's one by Isaac Shelby. But he does, yes, he says very much the same thing about how they're going to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland was a very intense man.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to head out here and I'm going to take you down that section where the Lincoln County Militia and where Cleveland's men were. I'll show you that general area, talk a little bit about the stuff that took place there. If you folks at that point then want to continue on the rest of the way, I'll have to make my way back to the visitor center.
That's more than fair.
But,
what I think is cool is both these guys fought side by side, literally. So it'd be easy in one fell swoop to hit them both. Yeah. And then could you explain, I didn't realize this till last time you told me this when I was here, that the way the British would shoot down on the Patriots coming up, with the ground the way it is, there's a military term to explain the angling of the ground, which didn't allow them to fire at them, they fired over them. What's that called?
So that's a
this is important.
About the military crest of the hill
versus
the geographic crest of the hill. So the geographic crest is the top. The military crest is the point at which when you aim down the slope, there is no dead ground, and you can pretty much shoot and you've got a good chance of you're going to hit somebody. You're not going to overshoot them.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, those two, the military crest and the geographic crest, are the same thing, but that's not always the case. So here at Kings Mountain, the military crest is 20 to 50 yards lower down than the geographic crest, what that meant was that as the Patriots were coming up the hill, there's a certain point of dead ground where they are not visible to the Loyalists at the top of Kings Mountain. Now, by the same token, since the Loyalists are at the geographic crest rather than the military crest, they don't really have a whole lot of cover. They're standing up there silhouetted by the blue sky. So they are very visible to the Patriots coming up the hill, whereas if they had been lower down on the military crest, they would not have been as visible to them when they're working.
That is a big snafu by the loyalists, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And there was that same scenario is all the way through the war to suppress Southern independence. They were always told, shoot for the knee, right?
yeah,
To get the
yeah. It's something that it's a problem that comes in all the time. Like I said, once you get up to the top of Kings Mountain, it's because of the narrowness. Generally, you want to fight on the high ground if you can't. I personally don't think that this is the ground that Ferguson would have chosen had he been planning to fight here.
Yeah.
For the reasons with that slope and that I talked about before a minute ago. He's taken by surprise here, so there's not really a chance to form up effectively. We know roughly where his militia were, but it was probably a lot more of a mess and very ad hoc.
He's a professional soldier, too.
He is. Right? This was probably a trail that was first blazed by the Native Americans millennia before the Europeans got here. It was repurposed in the colonial period as a road, and it was sort of the main road through the mountains here on the way to Charlotte. So if you look at this map, and not a really good one, you're not really going to see too much from it here, but this was put together in 1775 by a guy named Mouzon, M-O-U-Z-O-N, and it was the most accurate map, so he claimed, of the Carolinas, north and south at that time, as well as the Cherokee territory. So you can see how it's divided into 4 quadrants. We are up here, so if we zoom in close on that upper quadrant there, you can kind of see Appalachian Mountains over there, Blue Ridge Mountains over there. This is Mecklenburg County down over here, and
We came from Asheville this morning. So
okay,
that's
yeah,
right in that area.
yeah. You got the Cherokees down over here. You can see they haven't really figured out the border yet. So Kings Mountain, that mountain range is right in over here. And if we zoom in even closer, you can see modern Charlotte or Charlotteburg. There's Kings Mountain. This is the road that both of the armies are going to take to come down in here. So we're standing right along the middle of this road in there that cut through the mountains. And this is really the thing that's going to answer that question that people ask, why would they fight a battle here? They fight the battle because this is where the road is.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really the big thing. So there's Kings Creek. The Patriots will cross Kings Creek, split into their 2 columns, and then go to surround Kings Mountain. So since it seems at least one guy here who's a veteran.
You got two.
Got 2, okay. So I also have some maps from the Kings Mountain Staff Ride handbook, showing some of the earlier engagements, the general area for the Blue Ridge Mountains. And you can find this book online. It's free to access to people of the Carolinas. So this is just a bit more of a modern map. Again, you can see all of the rivers in there. Patrick Ferguson, when he starts his march, he's up here at Gilberttown. The Patriots are up there at Sycamore Shoals. He wants to get to Charlotte. The interstate doesn't exist, so he has to make use of all of these fords, which adds time and slows him down. It's not just a straight march as it would be today if you were going to come down the interstate. This is just a more of a sort of an up-close view, again, so you can really get a sense of all of those rivers and what a barrier this is to getting to Kings Mountain here. So we are, at the time of the battle, really only about a day's ride from Charlotte. For an army, probably 2.5 days, but, very close. He's very, very close when the time when the battle is fought.
Go back. It's interesting though, you know, the first group of eventually the Over Mountain boys actually starts up here in Abingdon, Virginia. So I'm surprised they don't just put one more spot there.
Yeah, you know, I didn't make the map.
No, I'm just
So,
saying.
you have to.
Poor Abington gets left out.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
one. Yeah, huh. When they receive word that Ferguson is at Kings Mountain, they follow the existing road, such as it is, get to Kings Creek, split into those columns, and then it's about a mile to a mile and a half from Kings Creek to Kings Mountain itself. So there's a little bit of time to get here. And one of the stories that I always like to tell, especially when I've got folks who are here, who are veterans, they've never been here before, is I like to talk about this bit of high ground right over here. It's sort of in the same area, you know, where the other stuff we're going to be talking. Communication was very difficult, coordinating between the different units. One of the Patriot militia officers, Major Winston, leads his men in a charge up this hill here, this high ground, thinking that this is Kings Mountain.
This specific hill.
This specific
He
hill.
thinks he's there.
This is not Kings Mountain. Kings Mountain is behind this, so he charges up this slope, gets to the top, realizes it's not Kings Mountain. He's got to lead his men down and then up again to actually get into the battle.
That'll wear you out.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of jokes about majors and officers getting lost in the woods.
He's a Marine.
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of how we drove here
What do
too.
they call it? Jarhead?
We circled the place 3 times before we got here.
Yeah. I like to tell
Well,
that
I was a
about,
navigator, you know.
I could not tell that, by
I
the
like
way.
to make that joke about majors specifically because my younger brother, and I have to say younger because he's 6'1", but my younger brother is a major in the Marine Corps.
Cool.
So I like to make those jokes. All right, so let's go down Kings Mountain.
Okay.
So Kings Mountain slopes sort of down at an angle. So this is the lower end. The peak of Kings Mountain is about 1,019 feet in terms of elevation. From here to the, well, if we were over on the other side of the trail,
Right.
up over there, there's about a 60-foot difference between here and the top of it over there. It's not terribly high, but when people are shooting at you and trying to bayonet you, it makes a huge difference.
So what's the peak at the top?
The peak at the top is
How high?
1,019 feet.
Sorry?
1,019.
Gotcha.
1019.
Gotcha.
Cut on this lower area here by Major William Chronicle, who commands in the same area where the Lincoln County militia are fighting. So he had cleared out this hunting encampment. They had cut themselves a path through this up over here. This time of year, when everything is so overgrown, you really can't see it, but there is a fire trail that goes up there, and you can really see how it sort of wraps around the side of Kings Mountain and then gets you up there.
Well, the leaves might have turned some, but they would still be on.
So again, tactical map, a little blurry. Apologies for that. The red there, that's the British. They're at the top of Kings Mountain there. We are standing in this area here. The visitor center is down here. So we went through the line, the Patriot line where Major Winston was. We're now where Chronicle and Hambright were. So the Lincoln County militia, this is their spot in the line. So that's what they're facing if you turn around and look up the hill that way when they're going up that hill. This section of the line was under the command of Colonel Frederick Hambright. He had given over to command to Major William Chronicle because Chronicle was a local, knew the area, and knew the terrain. Some people will tell you that Hambright's English wasn't that good, but it doesn't really seem to have affected him that much. Chronicle and Hambright deploy their forces along the Colonial Road and in this direction over here. Chronicle draws his sword, faces his troops, gives them the command, turn and face the hill, boys, pointing his sword up the hill, and is then cut down by a blast of Royalist gunfire. So command goes back to Frederick Hambright, who is himself wounded, leading his men up the top of Kings Mountain there. And there's actually 2 monuments to Colonel Hambright. There's one there and there's one up the hill above it. At the end of the battle, Hambright takes his boot off and pours the blood out of it from the wound. He survives. He lives till he's about 90. His house is somewhere around 5 or 10 miles away from here, and he has I think it's like a dozen children by the time he passes away.
Vigorous man.
Yeah. Now,
Well, that's Hambright Mills, right? I mean,
now, if you turn around and look at this, what we were looking at here is the Chronicle monument, Chronicle marker. And this was set up in 1815 by locals to commemorate Major William Chronicle, because he is the guy who is passing away here. Now, the Chronicle marker is this one here, not the rectangular one. In 1914, this one had sort of worn away so much that they put in the second marker to sort of preserve the inscription. Now, what makes this one special is that this is the second oldest battlefield monument anywhere in the country. The only older one is at Lexington Green up in Massachusetts. So that kind of makes it pretty special. Not bad for, you know, a road in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina. At that time, when they set up this monument, they also speak to collecting the bones that they found on the battlefield and reburying them. Unfortunately for us, I can't remember exactly how they phrase it, but they say something to the effect of that they reburied them like 200 paces from the large oak tree. So, not super duper helpful. We've not located any of the graves. The only marked grave that you're going to find anywhere in the park is that of Patrick Ferguson, but the others are out there somewhere, such as they are.
and you know, I'm just thinking that if that much time has gone by, it's pretty hard to tell the difference in a British bone and a Patriot bone.
But they did at Camden. They were able, when they exhumed the 6 bodies, they were able to differentiate, right, between the difference.
DNA?
Yeah, DNA and also whatever they had, the buttons or whatever they had.
Buttons, different wear and tear on the bones from the different diet. So, for example, somebody that's growing up in the Americas is going to grow up eating corn. That's not the case if you're growing up in Britain.
Yeah, that's right.
So they had things there like that that they could use to differentiate.
Pretty amazing. And they showed up in force, the British, to honor their dead. They light something. What was the name of the unit they were from? And
The name escapes me.
I tell you what, Camden is a perfect example of when our guys are facing bayonets.
yeah, disaster. Disaster.
You know that Horatio.
Go ahead. Where do you want us?
I was just going to go over to that bench, so we'll be more in the middle of... So roughly based on... Oh man, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Based on estimates for the maps of where they were, the number of troops that were under them, and so on and so forth, this would be approximately the center of Colonel Cleveland's line, where we're standing right now. So when they deploy, they're going to be facing this much steeper section of hill right over here. When we talk about the Patriots surrounding Kings Mountain, that's true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're fighting on every square inch of ground. I've taken, current combat units for the, infantry combat units for the U.S. Army around, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm not going to run up the hill here. I'm gonna run up over there where it's not so steep.
Not quite so steep.
Yeah.
That'll wear you out.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get sections of Kings Mountain like this in a lot of various places, especially if you get on the other side of it, where like McDowell's men were and some of Campbell's men were, where it's just very, very steep. And the archaeology would seemingly confirm that there wasn't as much going on there because they didn't find as many bullets and projectiles. Again, just incredibly steep. Not easy to get up, not easy to get down. But this is where Cleveland's men are going to be. So when he's giving his command, telling them to hide behind the trees, to fall back and advance as necessary, this is where all of that's going on. Now, much like the further section down here, this is also the scene of some of the more brutal fighting. At the top up there is where the Loyalist encampment is. And Boy, you know what? I was really hoping, I don't usually do this talk this time of year here. I was really hoping that the trees are going to be more cooperative than they are. If you come by here in like October, November, December, you can really see it up the top there.
At what point, when we go up there and walk around the top of the hill, at what point can we see where they would approach Franklin? Is there a marker up there or something?
This time of
At the top, right?
yeah, so at the top, there's 3 monuments. There's the Centennial Monument that marks the peak. There's the Coward Monument or marker that commemorates Colonel Asbury Coward, who was a 19th century individual, but who helps preserve the first 39 acres of the park. And then the encampment is marked by the U.S. Monument, which is a big, tall obelisk that resembles the Washington Monument in D.C. So that's the spot where the battle ends. That's the spot where the encampment is. That's where your guys are going to be heading towards.
Okay, so that if we go to that monument, you look over the side of the mountain, and that's where they came up.
Yeah. So when you're going to be coming down the trail, it's going to be oriented like this. You're going to see them to the left.
Okay, very helpful. We'll take a look up there.
So to the left, if you're standing at the monument, immediately to the left, down the hill is going to be where Cleveland is. You walk past the monument, maybe 100 yards or so, and you'll see a metal cutout of a militiaman, like holding a musket, and it say Hambright Monument. If you look down there, that's where your guys were going to be.
Okay.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I'll give you another little tidbit.
Sure.
Asbury Coward.
Yeah.
If you have any visitors who are Charlestonians, the mess hall at Citadel is Coward Hall.
I think somebody might have told me that before, but yeah, that makes sense. He had run a military school out by Rock Hill before the Civil War, and then a little bit after the Civil War. I think somebody told me that we had a picture once that's of him, like a portrait that's at the Citadel. So that does ring a bell to me.
So how many men would have been with Cleveland, and how many men with Lincoln? Ballpark.
Those are really hard estimates. Cleveland had the biggest single unit that we know of is Colonel's troops. Not Colonel's. Colonel Campbell's troops. He had around 400 men with him. Cleveland was another fairly big group, so probably, I tend to be more conservative in my estimates, probably around 250, give or take. The Lincoln County guys and under Hambright, the Lincoln County guys probably around 75, maybe 100, but they are combined in there with Hambright, so they are a larger group. So a lot of the Patriot units, they're sort of marked by what their commanding officer would have been, but they're combining a bunch of smaller companies and units to try and get like formations that are roughly equivalent in size, if that makes sense to you.
They frequently did that.
Yeah.
People would move back and forth. You might be assigned to this regiment, but you might actually be working with a completely different commander.
Right.
And they all thought that was perfectly okay.
Yeah. I'm sure you know plenty about Cleveland, so I'm going to tell you all about him. Very, very devoted to the cause individual. Could be very brutal, very inspirational to his men. Big guy. And there's plenty of memoirs, journal entries that will talk about, listening to him roar for the entire course of the battle. Encouragement and, very active. A lot of these, and again, what I was talking about before, the way that these officers and men behave more like Native Americans. So your European officers, they are directing the battle. These officers are leading the battle. They are in the front. They are not saying go there. They're saying follow me. Their men are essentially told, our goal is to get to the top of Kings Mountain. However you accomplish that, it's up to you. But as long as you're heading up the hill, you're doing the right thing.
They were, you just try to see in your mind the kind of men they were. It's just we don't have people like that because they didn't grow up that way. They didn't fight from the time they were 10 years old out here on the frontier. But man.
Interestingly, they also tended to be bigger than their European counterparts. Most Americans did at the time of the Revolutionary War. That's one of those weird things with immigration where it goes up and down. Because like if you look at the time of the Civil War, the average height for American male is much more similar to that of a European male because of all of the folks who are coming over immigrating from Europe. But for the people who were born here, they had access to corn, they had access to more protein, so they tended to be larger by several inches.
And they generally did manual labor.
Yeah, than a lot of their European counterparts.
So Captain Martin, he was a captain, right? Mm-hmm. So where would he have, just if you put your creativity in, how would that be organized in terms of Cleveland's group, and what would his role have been as a captain?
Probably much the same as Cleveland, more of a follow me, leading from the front. Probably would have had his own firearm. Again, you know, very dissimilar to the European style where he'd have a sword and probably mounted or perhaps on foot pointing in the direction. Here he would have been dismounted. He would have been leading his men from the front, armed with his rifle or musket, whatever weapon he was carrying, actively firing at the enemy. That's how they all appear to have been fighting this battle at the time. Possibly had so it's individual or clusters of small men.
I thought Wilkes County, maybe where he was from, he would have some guys from the county. His brother was here, John, right, Gary? John Gambill?
Yeah, from Wilkes.
Yeah, he has his brother here with him.
Wilkesboro, North Wilkesboro.
Yeah. So probably had some men clustered around him. You know, he might say, hey, go tell those guys they need to push up, be more aggressive, sort of, you know.
It was sort of, in a way, almost clannish. I mean, the people they knew, trusted, and you know, you said something a moment ago. You're talking about being big men. You know how Daniel Morgan was famous for settling any arguments?
With his fists. Yeah.
And one quick question. With all the patriots and everybody here, one time when the battle was just starting, approximately, what's the total, just approximate total of people?
Best we can tell, it's roughly even, 1,000 men on each side.
Okay, 1,000. So 2,000 men around each.
And both the patriots, the Americans and the British will put all sorts of you know, they'll say, oh, you know, there were more patriots than that. There were 2,000, there were 3,000, and we were only 900. Or, you know, the patriots will be like, oh, we were only 1,000, but they were 3,000.
Yeah, a lot of exaggerations.
Exaggerations. When the patriots are marching towards Kings Mountain, they encamp at the cow pens, and because they're trying to catch Patrick Ferguson, they mount up and they ride to Kings Mountain. Now, that's roughly 30 miles. There were a lot of men who didn't have good horses who were following on foot. Yeah. And they are going to be streaming in after the fact, in the day afterwards, to help sort of clear out the stuff that they do. So that's where the estimates get a little wonky. So sometimes you will see lists of men who participated in the battle, and it will say, you know, this person is known to have participated in the battle. Or you'll have one that will say, this man participated in the campaign, may not have participated in the battle. Somebody had to guard the horses, somebody had to guard the encampment. If you are dealing with dragoons, mounted professional soldiers who ride into battle and then fight on foot, usually what they would do is they would dismount, and every 4th, 5th, or 6th man would hold the reins of the horses for the others. Sure. So that's another where you get some guys who, you know, they're guarding the horses.
There's a very good, relatively new website. If you go on and just look up Battle of Kings Mountain, it actually has, you almost go chart blind, but not just chronological stuff, but then everything that Mark was asking about, which group of men, who were their leaders, where are they? It breaks out all of that, where they were, and then there's charts that show every name they know. It was here, where they were killed or wounded, or and it's all in one site. It's just a wealth of information.
Yeah.
What's the name of that site again?
I just looked up before we came down here, Battle of Kings Mountain.
Okay.
Wanted to see if there was any new things, and I wanted to go look at the picture of my grandsire's grave, and I came across that, and it was in the first 2 or 3 things, and it's a big website, but
Yeah.
you can't. What I just said, when you start seeing all these charts and everything.